Welcome to Dhamma on the Sidewalk, insights, interviews, and practical tips on the teachings of the Buddha for people of all walks of life, attuning, exploring, integrating the teachings in everyday life. Simple Dhamma for daily life. I'm Asoka, hosting Dhamma Capsule for people like you.
Today I'd like to explore a topic I've been reflecting upon for a while, and in particular, the past 6 weeks I spent totally out of my comfort zone and also involved, if you've listened to the previous episode, clearing the energy of the passing of the elder of the family. I found myself confronted with a number of questions regarding my practice, why I'm doing it, why I'm sticking to it, and what is it about? What is Buddhism about? Isn't that similar to other religions, that it requires minimalism and harsh or solitary conditions to actually train the mind to higher dimensions, so to speak? And a number of conversations with people of all walks of life have made me realize how very little it is known what actually a Buddhist practice is about. But just to say the least, what Buddhism is about. Recently, listening to Ajahn Tanisaro, or Ajahn Jeff Tanisaro Bhikkhu, he was pointing out that yes, there is a lot of lazy Dhamma out there. Meaning that the Buddha never said that it just happens like this, that you can train your mind and that's it, that's done. I can now move on to something else. It takes effort and it takes time, it takes patience, it takes intention, it takes resolve, it takes what is called adhitthana. So a number of causes and conditions must be constantly put together to maintain the practice and the focus. And it also seems that Buddhism is perceived as being a search for happiness. Buddhism is actually not a search for happiness. That is the first myth to debunk. It's about the other way, understanding the complexity of the mind's works for greater facilities in handling the samsara in which we live, with less cumbersome, sticky situation and obstacles, which all can be solved with our minds and our changing attitude and changing behaviors. And eventually, somehow on the way, there is a certain sense of peace and serenity that settles in. So the issue is the other way around. It's not about searching happiness. The Buddha never said, I'm going to teach you happiness, how to find happiness inside yourself. He said, I'm teaching suffering, the end of suffering. Now, the word suffering often is misinterpreted. So it can be dissatisfaction, it can be complications, it can be difficulties, it can be uneasiness, it can be a number of things. It can be anything that you might say, it's not about my happiness. So, difficulties. But he didn't say, I'm going to teach you happiness. So, on the way, there might be steps taken that settles in a bit of better sense of serenity and peace with ourselves and with the reality out there. So I'll just start by saying I've been asked, for instance, why, as I'm living outside a monastery, why is it so important for me to keep this practice? Why is it that I'm not eating at night, for instance? The fact of not eating at night is a precept. It's a 6th precept, and it's not a compulsory one when we don't live in a monastery. The fact is, I've lived in monasteries for about 3 years, and I got used to it. In keeping these precepts while not at the monastery, first of all, it keeps me healthy. It simplifies the fact that there's no need to look for food in the evening. And there are also allowable items that can be eaten at night, such as cheese or honey or, non-dairy milks and things like that. I'm not doing this as a difficulty. It just simplifies the way I live my day. And it also keeps my mind focused on the path. It keeps the training of the mind ongoing. Sometimes I really would love to have something else than a piece of cheese. Well, there are days where I actually do. I add some bread, for instance, but essentially I try to keep it. Why? Because it is good for maintaining a certain type of discipline. There are other precepts, such as not having any adornment, any jewelry, any makeup, and that hasn't been very difficult to keep as a precept. Some people may wonder if that is a sort of self-sabotage. No, it isn't, or whether that is a sort of restrictive minimalist attitude. No, it's not. It's just very simple, as well as keeping a shaved head. It's just very simple. It's living a monastic life while actually not being fully a monastic. As simple as that. And it trains the mind. It trains the mind. It keeps the mind involved in maintaining the path going. But I don't make it a harsh discipline. It actually really facilitates everything. Then, of course, not being a monastic, if I really want to um, let go, I can just let go. And that's okay, because eventually I'm not a monastic of the Thai forest tradition. There are not all monastics don't eat at night. On the sidewalk of Samsara, I've also have been asked to discuss a bit if Buddhism is really similar to other religions in terms of the form. It might have similarities of restrained attitude towards certain things, towards sensual pleasures, towards harsh speech, towards violent attitude, towards expressing one's emotions, towards a number of other aspects. But the essence of the Buddhist practice, or a practice that dwells into Buddhism, regardless of any schools, is that the content is very, very different. The richness and the self-investigating mind is a very different attitude and training compared to other religion. And that has been a point of sometimes arguments, pointing out from people, I know it's all the same. Yes, well, if you really want to believe it's all the same, good for you, but it isn't. And if you don't know what Buddhism is about, then ask questions rather than assuming. Essentially, Buddhism is a practice. It's not a protocol. It's actually even not even a faith. It's a self-investigating practice of contemplating one's own mind, its intricacies, its how the mind is locked into a mindset that might actually replicate um, difficulties and might just how can I say, that might just make life more complicated. And it also has to do with letting go and understanding and letting go certain knots that can be called karmic knots, and such as, for instance, patterns of behaviors, patterns of mindset, and a way that tendencies, propensities to do certain things in a certain way, and really trying to stick to a form of discipline that is not about judging and saying yes, it's okay, it's good or bad. It's that it just a discipline that tends to uh, peel off layers and layers of these habitual tendencies, and as such, looking at life as a cycle where these karmic propensities can be faded away in order to lean towards a life, a next life with less tendencies. Eventually, it is also having to do with perceiving life as having different types of cycles. So this life and a previous life and a next life. Having said that, it is not compulsory to consider that there is necessarily a next life. As a matter of fact, in the Theravada tradition, the actual breaking of all their karmic propensities and tendencies, habitual tendency, is to be happening in this life. That's why the practice is slightly more stringent in order to just complete all the cycles of life and possibly reach to a point of no return to any lives. This is to say whether this is how it is in the official version, then I'm not going to elaborate on the technicalities of that. So eventually, to conclude, Buddhism is a practice, a philosophy of life that encourages oneself to investigate his or her own mind, to lead a life with mindful awareness of habitual tendencies to do certain things in a certain way, and constantly trying to improve and move away from unwholesome tendencies and accumulate wholesome tendencies. And what is wholesome and what is unwholesome is elaborated upon in the text, and the texts are beyond 84,000 in various forms. Now, a Buddhist practice or a Buddhist person is someone who has committed himself or herself to lead this type of life. And the forms might be that some of them might not just eat at night, and some of them might just have a more have practiced more restraint in their daily life, not because they want to create more suffering in their life, but because they actually want simplicity in their life. Whether that might involve not having dinner with friends, it might be just being with friends while they are having dinner. and not eating, and there's no problem with that. So it's about really practice restraint and understanding oneself a bit better, so as to lead a life with and dig more serenity and peace out of life. I hope these musings will make you reflect and have been thought provoking for you. Thank you for being with us.